Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is the space. We bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Peace and love, I'm Nielle.
All right, on today's report, families in Charleston, in the Charleston Church Massacre, they've reached a multi-million-dollar settlement with the Department of Justice. Also, we're kicking off a new segment here on the show with Derica Wilson, co-founder of the Black and Missing Foundation, and Corlita Johnson, mother of Eotis Harris III.
Facebook rebranded itself. Los Angeles offers guaranteed income, and Serena Williams' autographed rookie card auctions at a record price.
Soulmates, we have that and so much more. This is our voice and it's our truth. So let's talk about it.
Hey, Soulmates, thank you for joining us this Friday. We made it all the way to Friday. Let's get to our top story, okay? Here's what we have for you. The Department of Justice has announced one of their respective offices is going to dedicate $21 million toward hate crime investigations and prosecutions. Newsweek reporting the DOJ has stated the Office of Justice Programs will be in charge of investigating and prosecuting hate crimes and assisting hate crime victims. So this recent funding, it's going to also help state, local, and tribal agencies and community organizations due to a rapid increase in violent and property crimes being committed under the guise of race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. We're going to break that down a little bit more for you in a bit. Thursday's announcement comes as the Justice Department recognizes the 12th anniversary of the enactment of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. That was signed into law by President Obama back in 2009. So, here on this show, the point of this show is to talk to you about national news and specifically have a space, right, where we tell you what that means to you, Black Americans. So, specifically to this story, according to the FBI's hate crimes report, the most recent report we have is from the most recent full year, obviously 2020. Hate crimes across the country continue to disproportionately affect Black Americans. Black Americans are the single largest group of hate crimes in this country still to this day.
Yeah, I agree. And when you think about it, James Byrd Jr., that happened in 1998, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of, inside your story, one of the things we were talking about. That was so devastating to see something like that happen in Jasper, Texas in 1998. And you think about it, here we are in 2021, and we think it since Black Lives Matter, since the insurrection. Like, over the last 2 or 3 years, I feel like these numbers of hate crimes have just really gone super high.
They've exploded, yeah.
And we have to find, not even a happy medium, we have to find answers to how can we stop this and what can we do to change this.
I don't know if there's really a straight cut and dry answer, Romeo, as to what will be that one answer. But Brooke, back to your point here, just a couple of numbers. So the hate crimes across the country, like you said, have exploded 14% just in 2020 alone. And so you can think about all the deaths, the Black deaths that we saw in 2020 over the pandemic. And I mean, honestly, you can see why people are okay watching a police officer kill a Black man, kill a Black woman, and no accountability. And so everyone else in the world feels like they probably can do the same because police officers are held to such a high standard. So if they're not getting accountability, people feel like they can do the same as well and not get caught.
Yeah, and you think about what incited this new brand of hate. It's not a new brand, but just the recurrence of hate. And you can't, help but think about Charlottesville and Unite the Right and those gentlemen in khakis and tiki torches defending Robert E. Lee, which takes us back to the history of this country and how hate crime started when we think of lynchings, when we think of how Black people in this country were victimized, and then we think of Donald Trump. We think of Steve Bannon and how they were in the White House and they kind of gave these individuals the power to feel the way that they feel in an open form. And this next story that we are going to talk about is a reflection of that as well. Families in the 2015 Charleston, South Carolina Church Massacre have settled with the Department of Justice for some $88 million over a faulty gun background check that allowed the shooter to buy the firearm he used the two sides announced on Thursday. Now, the Department of Justice said in a statement that it settled with the 14 plaintiffs in the case, awarding between $6 million to $7.5 million for each of the 9 people killed and $5 million for each survivor. The survivors and family members first alleged in 2016 that the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System failed to prevent the sale of the gun to Dylan Storm Roof, who wasn't allowed to have a firearm under federal law. Now, we know that Dylan Roof did appeal his conviction to be executed, and we know that the courts upheld that, so he will be executed. I believe the date hasn't been announced just yet. However, but when we think about hate crimes, and what really troubles me about this story is that after he killed those 9 black people that were in Bible study in that South Carolina church, the police officers went and bought him a Whopper from Burger King. So, and it's a hate crime. So we think about hate crimes, you think about law enforcement, you think about systemic racism in this country, and that's at the core of it, the systemic racism that perpetuates this country, that's interwoven through the fabric of everything that the nation stands for. The police departments, the criminal justice system, the education system, the health system. It's just overwhelming. And so Dylan Roof should be executed, I believe. But also, let's also talk about the Second Amendment. Although I support the Second Amendment, I think that this is an example of why background checks need to be fully examined, and they need to be fully implemented in this country.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the $88 million settlement number, because there's some significance there. Attorney Bakari Sellers, you're probably familiar with him, from South Carolina, from CNN. He actually helped negotiate this settlement, and he came out and said there is some incredible significance there. And so many at home may not know this, but the number 88 is a special number for white supremacist groups, for a lot of open racists out in this country. And Dylan Roof was actually wearing a shirt. There are photos before the shooting that show him wearing a shirt with the number 88. And it's also been widely reported that he brought 88 bullets with him to the church that day in an effort to, support his white supremacy. And so Bakari Sellers is saying, hey, listen, this $88 million number, this is a slap in the face to white supremacy, to racism. We're taking that power back, essentially. And, the sad thing, I think, overall about this is that whenever we talk about this story, I can't stop but think about the fact that, when we talk about racism and stereotypes, right? First of all, there's nothing wrong with rap music, nothing wrong with basketball. But when people talk about where you're going to find black people, they'll say rap concert, they'll say basketball court. And listen, you will absolutely find black people there. But what I always think about when you think about a big group of black people, where are you going to find them?
Church.
At church.
100%.
And that's where he went. That's where he found a bunch of kind-hearted, amazing black people who wanted to welcome him in, open the door, open their arms, and pray for him. And he brought 88 bullets. It's some to signify white supremacy and racism, and he slaughtered those people.
Yeah, and that's what's so devastating, because I'm going to bring up George Floyd's situation, okay? They were trying to arrest him. He was not really resisting arrest. We all know that. He was simply saying, look, I can't get in the backseat of the car. I can't do it right. He lost his life. If it was a black man that went into that church and killed 10 white people, or 9 white people, shot 9 white people, what would the result be in that situation? You think he'd been going to Burger King? Do you think he may have even come out of there alive if he still had the weapon on him? Maybe if he was driving a getaway car, if they wouldn't have shot the car up. That's the problem that we have when we talk about racism and the issue of how you handle things. When we talk about hate crimes and things like that. When people do wrong, depending on who they are, maybe on how they're going to get treated.
Absolutely. Just going back to stereotypes for a second, Brooke, like you said, the world already looks at black people as if they are criminals. And so the fact that Dylan Roof's execution was even remotely up for debate is mind-boggling, because we talk about Julius Jones all the time and how this is one man, and I don't want to muddy the lines of their cases here, but we're fighting for Julius Jones, this black man. I feel like, Romeo, what you were saying is, if it was even remotely a gap when a black man was getting a gun and did what he did, it would not even be debatable. It is almost not even going to happen that we can get Julius Jones to not be executed. But the fact that Dylan Roof was even remotely a thought to not be an execution blows my mind, and it absolutely goes back to him being white and not black. That's how I feel.
All right. Well, Oklahoma administered the death penalty Thursday on a man who convulsed and vomited, and he was executed for the 1998 slaying of a prison cafeteria worker, ending a 6-year execution moratorium brought on by concerns over his execution methods, according to the AP. John Marion Grant, 60 years old, who was strapped to a gurney inside the execution chamber, began convulsing and vomiting after the first drug sedative midazolam was administered. Several minutes later, 2 members of the execution team wiped the vomit from his face and neck. The Oklahoma Attorney General and Governor did not respond to questions about Grant's reaction to the drugs. In fact, Department of Corrections spokesman Justin Wolf said by email that the execution was carried out in accordance with Oklahoma Department of Corrections protocols and without complication. So, we just got through talking about a man that's going to be executed. Now we talk about this situation here. We know in 2014, 2015, this same state had mix-up with drugs, right? Yeah. So that was a problem. And now that they're doing it again, it brings on the question, we've had a debate, should someone go to death row? Should someone die for the things they did? Some of us say it depends on what they did. Some say it should not happen at all. But when you see something like this happening, and it's happened to one of us, how does it make you feel?
I mean, I think when you talk about the Constitution is supposed to protect you from cruel and unusual punishment, right? There is obviously an exception for death, but it's supposed to, I guess, somewhat be seamless. It's not supposed to be torture, even though death and kind of a 10-year wait-up period to death, someone could consider that
and what
torture.
they did.
Exactly. It's just, the question is always, should the government be allowed to kill its people? Mm-hmm. That's what the question kind of comes down to. Have we seen such a perfect criminal justice system currently where no one is ever wrongly convicted, where that we can be sure that you will never kill the wrong person? Because killing someone is the only punishment in our entire system that you cannot overturn, that you cannot bring back, that you cannot try and fix, right? As much damage as goes into people who spend decades in prison and then are exonerated and try to start their life over and really never really fully can. Mm-hmm. Death is the only thing that you can't start over. And so do we have a perfect enough criminal justice system that we know that we'll never need to?
The answer is no, Brooke. We do not. The marker, the scale as to why a person would need the death penalty, almost, it is, I don't want to say that it's case by case, but there are so many loopholes and so many ways to get around certain things. There is no perfect justice system. So I don't think that, and this is why people activists want to abolish the death penalty, because we see a disparity in how many black people are we talking about on a daily basis being executed versus the amount of white people being executed? So we're seeing our people being executed at much, much, much higher rates. And the justice system is just not perfect enough to be able to tell you who deserves to die and who doesn't deserve to die. And it's just, the death penalty really just hurts my heart when we talk about it, because, Brooke, like you said, you can't go back. You can't go back on that. You can't fix it. You can't erase it. What's done is done when it comes to that.
It's like a catch-22, because we talk about Dylan Roof, and we know that that's cut and dry. We know he murdered those people. And so for me, I think that he should be executed. But then when you think about how black people have been charged with so many crimes, and it's not even necessarily that they did them, and they're being executed. So for me, it's like a catch-22. I believe in it, but then I don't, because I know how the criminal justice system has victimized people of color in this country.
I mean, the people that are deciding this are humans as well, and everybody has an opinion. And so it just kind of seems unfair that someone gets to, I love that you have your opinion, Nia, but literally you're a human being just like the person that's making those decisions. If someone gets to live or die, a governor or whoever.
Those are jurors.
Jurors
decide,
governors,
yeah.
But the entire justice system, how are they to decide? They're human beings with emotions and feelings as well. Who are you to be able to decide if someone gets to live or not? I don't know. All right, guys, I get really passionate when we talk about that. So a federal jury has determined that the GEO Group must pay minimum wage rather than $1 a day to immigration detainees who are performing tasks like cooking and cleaning at its for-profit detention center in Washington state. The verdict came Wednesday in U.S. District Court in Tacoma in a second trial over that issue. So the first trial ended in June with a deadlocked jury. The jury will now consider how much the immigrant detainees who worked at the facility are owed. The Northwest Detention Center houses people who are in custody while the federal government seeks to deport them or reviews their immigration status. It can hold up to 1,575 detainees, making it one of the nation's largest immigration jails. I meant to do the math because I love doing the math to see how much money this for-profit center is making. $1 a day, that math is easy. That's $365 a year. And I just feel like they should go back and see exactly how much every single person is owed, whether it doesn't even matter, immigrant, detainees, $1 a day is outrageous. Yeah. It just really is outrageous.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I'm hearing they're making them provide thousands of haircuts a day. They would give them extra food. It's almost like, okay, you've earned some extra food, so we're going to pay. No, I mean, like, I feel like this is wrong in so many ways. And we're talking about over how many facilities? There's 57 correctional and detainee facilities across the United States and an additional 5 facilities overseas. So this money that they would normally have to pay, that they're going to have to pay, it looks like, where's it been sitting or where's it been going to begin with?
You know what's also interesting is that we never see this same argument being made. So we have an argument. First of all, the truth is, and let me just go into this because I'm pointing out hypocrisy, right? But let me go into this saying that I know it's a false argument. So studies have long showed that immigrants who come to America and work do not take jobs, do not take wages, do not change wages, make them worse off for American-born Americans, right? But that's always the narrative that you hear, right? We've all heard that, right? Yeah. Oh, they're going to take our jobs. They're going to. Why don't we hear this about prison? Because companies will much rather pay 2 cents an hour than $7.55, than $15. Like, do you know what I mean? And so why do you never hear that argument? It's almost like this idea that people are allowed to be treated this way. And I mean, I've talked to you about this. You know, I had a close family member, you know, dealing with a nonviolent drug conviction and just, you know, needing to eat every day because of medicine, right? Needing to eat every day because of medicine. But we've also seen different reports of the type of food that is served to people who are currently incarcerated, right? And so some days they couldn't stomach it. Some days they couldn't, you know, and some days they could. On the days that they couldn't, they had to have a safety package of ramen noodles. And this person worked 40 hours a week, worked every day, worked a full-time job, and was taking home $8 a month. A 20-pack of ramen cost $6.
Don't add up.
Right.
So the prices for things in commissary are higher than they are out here,
Absolutely.
But the wages are lower. And I think, you know, the question is why? What does that form of punishment do? I guess I've never really gotten an answer.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the numbers for prison inmates had dropped under the Trump administration. And during that time, Jeff Sessions approved these detention centers. I had mentioned it before. When Donald Trump first got into office, he made a really big deal about immigrants. He shut down the airports and people couldn't come in. And then Jeff Sessions at the time, who was the Attorney General for the United States, approved all of these detention centers, the 55 to 57 that you mentioned, Romeo. And GEO got these contracts. And so now what you're seeing is, you know, it's transactional. Business is about transaction. These people are just dollar amounts to them. And this is why there has to be a bigger conversation about prison reform in this country, because we know that GEO and CoreCivic are private companies that should have no business running prisons. Prisons should be run by state. And with GEO and CoreCivic, it's just all about the money. And so what you're seeing in this story is, which is finally a good thing, is that a jury decided that what was happening is unfair. But the bigger problem is we need to get rid of privatized prisons. And that's the end of the conversation.
All right.